oku hoa mahi aku rangatira ki tēnei tū mō mahi. Ngā mea pānake ngā tua kaitaki me ngā tipua. Mihi karanga. Mihi karanga ki a tātou ki tēnei o ngā pūkenga, o ngā taiao, mai o ngā rā i mua ki tēnei. Huri noa ki tēnā o whātua konei kei a tamaki. Ki o hōtou haukainga a maunga, a matāho, me tēnā o Waitemata, tēnā hōtou, kia ora huhu mai tātou. Well, hello everybody. I can see a couple of photos in there and a couple of frowns going, what the hell? You fellas doing all right? August, I can see you going, hey. So, pleased to have a chance to have a talk with a few of you. I missed that thing on TV last night, but I've been getting attitude all morning from my mates saying, old Dr. Hard Talk now, are we? I don't know about that. I'm about the softest fella there is out there, eh, Kanan? I can see you, bro. And there's been a few comments coming into my Facebook site and some other things about what I had to say last night. Since I haven't seen it, I'm not sure what they edited in and out, but there's been a few comments about me saying that gym's a waste of time. I don't think that's the case. I think gyms are awesome for rehabilitation. I think they're awesome for getting people together. I think there's a whole range of uses for them, but over time we want to move back into the taio, which is kind of where we got to with this idea of the mobile Wānanga, is going to have a look at the taio firsthand and seeing what that means. So today's talk is about a journey we went on during February and March from Te Rerenga Wairua to Muri Hiku, right down to the bottom, and a bit of a discussion about some of the things that happened along the way. This is our first go at doing, or mine anyway, for doing a webinar based idea of delivering some ideas. I always find it difficult doing things online because I like to see people's faces and see what their responses are, figure out whether they are on board and can handle, or whether they not into it, or how they're coping. I'd encourage you to send some comments in while we're talking on the chat box there, so I can respond to some of those as we're rolling through. Pretty important to get some feedback, otherwise I feel like I'm just talking to myself, which most of the time I am. I don't seem to have too many mates on this area that I work in at the moment, but I'm sure there's some ways we can get around that. If you have any trouble with the system while we're going, send us a message about that as well, and Hariata's here to try and coordinate some of those things and get it moving. Other than that, make sure you put your name in with your chat as it comes in, so I know who it is I'm talking with and what your questions are about. So, from here, Kane, I can see your picture clearly. Give me a nod if you're sweet with this. Okay, I'll talk directly to you, and whoever else is on there, they can nod when their pictures come up. I've got a couple of pictures here. The mobile Wānanga was an attempt to put into practice some of the whakaaro, some of the mātoranga that we've been talking about in this this sector, this domain, and see how some of these things actually rolled out, whether the ideas that I'd been generating and talking were things that we could apply out into the environment, into the taio. It was kind of a mixture of approaches in that I wanted to include information about ngā whetū, about wai, and about whenua in one journey from the top to the bottom. And I got opportunity to connect to Maunga a lot because I used a mountain bike, so 70% of the time I was out in the bush, 30% of the time I would go into roads that would transfer me onto another piece of off-road trail. I chose to use a mountain bike as a medium of delivery. It wasn't so much about the mountain bike, but more about the moment that mountain bike got me to. If you like, we called that the hui ho rino, or the steel horse that got me back into maunga locations. So it was a means to an ends, really. Some of the experiences I put up on Facebook were a surprise to me as well. They were things that happened just as I was rolling along and were unexpected. Some of them I think were tohu for indicating what was coming up. Right from the start on the first day there, as I headed down towards the beach, down a 90-mile beach there, to come across a tuna heading down the sand, trying to make his way back out to the ocean, was somewhat prophetic, indicating to me that I was on my journey as well. I picked him up, and it had been a long time since I'd heard chatting from tuna, but they chirp. When you pick them up, they chirp, and they try and talk with you about a few things that's going on. So that came through the video at the time when I picked them up. So there was a lot of occasions like that during the journey that I hadn't been prepared for, but reminded me of when I was younger. I'm from Poto, so spending a lot of time on rivers and chasing eels was something I did a lot when I was a kid, but coming back across them at the start of my journey was a topi for me. The mobile Wānanga page set up, it was interesting too, because everybody laughs at me, because prior to that Wānanga page I only had 3 friends, and one of them was my wife, and 2 of them were athletes that I work with. So people said, actually you only had 2 friends, and they weren't friends, they were people that you had to work with. So I had no friends. But managed to talk with a number of other people about some of the things that were going on through that format. I think from the very beginning, people were making contact with me to figure out how they could engage with something like that, how they could be a part of it, how they could reconnect. And it wasn't so much a desire to connect with me as it was to reconnect with their own environments, where they were and what they were experiencing and how they might be able to engage in a similar idea. I was pretty blessed really in a lot of ways to be able to be away from my home, away from my girls, away from a desk for that amount of time to go and entertain ideas of travelling down the motu, but I learned a huge amount of things from the journey itself. I put up, or between Hariata and I, we put up a few different pictures of things that happened along the way that to talk to you about, that were highlights or things that I remember pretty clearly from the journey. This is on the first day, this photo you can hear. Can you see that one? You can see that, Kanan? I mean, you're my conduit, Kanan, because you're the only one I can see still. And I don't know how many people are actually listening. Oh, there's another one. Kia ora. That was on day 1, riding down the beach. Some real interesting things happened there. In the first 30 minutes is when I came across that tuna. I'd stopped and was looking at different things. The bike that I was riding, that had been provided by some fellas from the US, because they liked the idea of attending to Indigenous health but using a mountain bike to get to it. So it aligned with the philosophy of the company, so they sent a bike over for me to be able to use, which was mean. But only got it on the Friday, and the ride was due to start on the Saturday or Sunday morning at the latest. So I didn't get any kind of training in on the bike, I just started riding. But I figured you get fit along the way, and that kind of happened. That day that I started down the beach there, it was about 110k on the first day, and on the sand, as the tide started to change, some people come to see me. Here's one of them here. Group from Ehiku, and some from Te Rarawa up there came along to have a chat with me about how things were going.
so they brought their bikes down and had a bit of a ride along.
The consequence of that was that the ride ended up being a bit longer on the beach, so that I didn't get in until 10 o'clock at night, and the last 2 hours were ridden in the sea, so the water was up around the bottom of the bike, and that made for real hard riding because the sand was so soft. I don't know what it did to the bike, but it covered it fairly regularly in salt water and turned it into a bit of a grind. But it was a real good filter for the rest of the ride, that because it was such a strong headwind that day as well, would have been 35 knots straight into it. That slowed me down more. Being able to ride in the deep sand was a tough thing as well. By the end of that first day, I figured if I'd made it through that day, then it couldn't get too much tougher after that. So I was blessed in a lot of ways that I got dealt to on day one. I enjoyed the challenge of that first day and figured that as I got going, things would get easier. Actually what happened was it went up and down a lot, where some days were mean and then other days were crap. Just depended on how tough the previous day had been. Now, running alongside that mobile Wānanga, we also had a maramataka piece of work that was delivered, and that was through a fellow Rereata Makiha. Now, this is real interesting stuff that's going on in this sector at the moment. We had a wānanga up in Kaikohe over the weekend that was led by Rereata Makiha. It was based at the Kura o Kaikohe, and Tūkaki Waititi was the MC, or the controlling voice over all of the wānanga. It was a hell of an interesting wānanga. It opened up new doors that I hadn't considered anywhere near the depth that I needed to. For example, what we're going to try and attempt with the kura up in Kaikohe is to develop individualised maramataka approaches to physical activity, which means they'll have their own maramataka that they write through observations that are spread across 60 days, where they conduct, there's 5 modalities that I think are going to be useful for this. One of them is a group that's going to do the same exercise every day for 30 days in a row and take observations of how they can handle, can't handle, psychologically affected or spiritually affected throughout that space. There's another group that will be doing different exercises every day over 30 days. There's another group that will be in a different environment doing exercise over 30 days. There's another group that will be following the maramataka that's been prescribed for the area and having physical activity aligned to that.
Now this picture that's up at the moment, that maramataka picture that you can see, that's riding during the evening and into Poto, I think it was at the time, on the maramataka, which meant that it was a full moon, and on sunrise it was going to be a full king tide, which meant that prior to sunrise there was a double power opportunity to express that through physical activity, which consequently meant that I should be able to ride all night without being too tired and not deteriorating too much.
According to the maramataka. So I trialled that. On that day I rode from the Hokianga through to Poto, which I think was 150 k's, and rode through the night and got in at I think 4 o'clock in the morning. A couple of things that happened around that was, while it was supposed to be a mean day for riding and an awesome night for riding, because it was so fresh and that I'd only been out for a couple of days, I don't think I aligned very well to the maramataka. It was all tough. I was tired every day for the first 5 days. So regardless of whether it was a double power day, it didn't feel like that for me so much, although I managed to ride all night, so maybe it did work. I remember at the time putting up some information about mosquitoes, because during that night while I rode, if I stopped, I got smashed by mosquitoes. So I put up a wānanga about mosquitoes actually being an indicator of, I don't know if they're positive attributes, but if you look at a whakapapa of a mosquito, it's still here. They've been really successful in surviving and dominating their environment. So there's a lot of things we can learn from them, such as their preference for moving at night, for being in small groups, not being able to be heard when they do move, when they attack, you don't know they've attacked, so you can't feel it. A whole range of things that they do really well. So we talked about that during a Wānanga that night, because what they did to me was, even if I was tired, I couldn't stop, because the moment I did, they were into me. So they motivated me in a way that you wouldn't expect. So I put that up as a Wānanga. I tried to align to the maramataka. I think the journey, I projected it would take 30 days. It took 22 from one end to the other. I think what happened was, as I got fitter, I started to align to maramataka thing completely. So that idea of maramataka and aligning to that is another group from Kaikohe. They're going to try and follow that. And the last group of that group of 5 is going to look at what are the changes that we go through physically, psychologically and spiritually, so that each day, consecutive day, one will be about physical activity. The next day may be physical activity, but it will be from a psychological perspective, which may mean, for example, holding a 2 kilo weight in the end of your hand for 15 minutes to see what happens with that, which is a different approach. Or a spiritual one, which may be a connection to a wāhi tapu, and you go to that place for that day. So you can see there's a lot of variety around how we can engage with maramataka, and in essence what all of them about are noticing changes in the environment. Talking about that part, we're going to keep developing that, and over time what I'd like to move into is establishing physical activity programs for specific districts and communities that are related to their maramataka, which in some ways is their observations of their location. So that over time, people that are from coastal areas should have a different physical activity program from those that are near mountains, to reflect the characteristics of the places that they represent, which is another concept I've talked to other groups about around envirophysiology, that it might well be that we're put together as a consequence of the places that have demanded that from us. So that if you want to survive next to a mountain, then you take on the characteristics of a mountain in order to survive. Whereas if you're from the coast, you might change your mind every 12 hours, because it'll come in and you'll have an attitude and then it'll change and go back out, and so you shift back and forwards. And I'd like to see that through a physical activity program that can be innovative and creative enough to include that. So a whole range of things going on there around maramataka. Tested some of that night by seeing how far I could ride. Funny thing was, that night arrived into Poto. I'd never been there before. Got off my bike, lay down on the only flat bit of grass I could find, and went to sleep for 2 hours, because there was a fishing boat coming through the Kaipara harbour the next morning to jump on that and to carry on, which is the next photo. I've been on this boat after I've ridden all night and looked a bit rugged there. Jumped on this boat to get a ride down through the Kaipara harbour. The funny thing was, is at Poto, where I laid down to go to sleep, it was right underneath the sign, and when I woke up 3 hours later, it said no camping. And I thought, well, don't make me pull out my tangata whenua card, because I don't care whether it says no camping, I'm sleeping right here. So there was a few things that happened along the way that made me realise that I must have been quite tired to just go to sleep like that and then get up and keep moving. One of the other things that I'm looking forward to doing with this Wānanga, mobile Wānanga concept, is trialling it again in probably another 10 months, but with a waka. I'm looking at how to attach my mountain bike to the outrigger of the wakama, so that it can sit on it and I can paddle all the water bits myself, and don't have to rely on anybody to get across sections of water. And then once I'm out, a bit like a golf cart, you can hook a wakaama onto the back of a bike and tow it. And I kind of like the idea of portaging waka. As someone from Tainui, there's 11 portage sites in Auckland alone, of where we carried waka across land masses to get to other pieces of water. I'd like to engage with that concept or idea again, start from the south and come all the way back up, and paddle big stretches of water. To paddle across the Cook Strait would be mean, I think. To paddle Lake Taupo, to paddle the Whanganui River, all of those locations where you could get there yourself. So while I'm telling you this, is I wouldn't mind some mates. Just saying. Yeah. If there's some mates out there to do it with, it'd be cool to Wānanga that whole journey and paddle some of those sections and ride. and even maybe run off on some of the Maunga sections for a bit of an exploration journey. There's plenty of potential around that anyway. Still working on it. If anybody's got any contributions to how we might be able to get the attachments working better for towing these waka, let me know. More than welcome, but I'd like to see some of you in the future engaging with the idea.
Now, this section here through Whanganui, probably my favourite area of the whole event was riding through from Taumaranui to Whanganui. The main reason for that was, as I came over the pass to start dropping down into the Whanganui River, it was a brutal climb. I have to say, it was, maybe 45 k's of hill climb constantly until it got to the top and then shot down the other side. But the really interesting part was, once I got to the other side, I jumped in the boat for about 15 k's to go down the river. That'd be a part that we could pedal. Notice I said we there, you fellas.
Well, that sounds mean. Some support from Hotu. I've talked with Hotu a little bit in the past because we're from the same waka, and I love what he does. He's a specialist in how to handle the waitote or saltwater environments, and especially offshore stuff that I think our people have lost the connection to, but is being redeveloped really quickly. And with so many of our mō talking about our ability out in the open water, and then so few of us being able to handle it, it's a real essential part to redevelop. But I think that those opportunities also exist in our ability to handle rivers and mountains as well. To be able to get up to the highest points of mountains and still handle, I think it's something we have in our whakapapa but have lost for a while. So I'm trying to fill in a gap there that Hotu initiated and got underway. But that's certainly an option to see how we could engage with some of those other initiatives to travel across some of the water parts. Anyway, coming back to the Whanganui River, what was cool about there, how are we doing for time? Out there that I've worked with before said that they paddled through Diano as part of a whānau journey and looked at some of the old trails that their tupuna moved through down there, from Anita Bay, which is out at the mouth of Pio Pio Tahi, through to Colac Bay. Awesome location. We took a group down, it must be 2 years ago now, to do the Araponamu, which was to follow where Pounamu had come out of and to take Pounamu back to those places to see what healing could be afforded through returning Pounamu back to its source, alongside the people that benefit as incidental outcome of doing that physical activity. That was an awesome trip as well.
Okay, so that last photo I had up here, why the Whanganui River was particularly appealing to me was because as we got over the top and started down to the other side there, when I got into the jeep boat driver stopped and pointed out all these holes that were in the mud walls along the side of the river.
And he said that those were the places that iwi had put their poles when they had poled up the river 400, 500, sometimes longer years ago of where they'd been. And that blew my mind at the time, because there was a hole in the mud of the wall where you could put your hand and know that your ancestors, someone from Whanganui, had been, with no question. You can think about following pathways that our tupuna may have been in the past, but you can't see their footprints anymore. But that place, you can. They were there. And so when I got down to Whanganui later on that night, I had a meeting with these fellas first thing the next morning. You can see us all outside their radio station. What happened there was I went in and talked with them about what had stunned me about being on that river. I said I'd never seen anything like that, where it was so visible, the whakapapa. And none of them had thought about it that way, which blew my mind as well, that they hadn't considered that that information was at their backyard. And so a lot of them started talking about, well, we really need to get back up there and have a look at that and figure out what that means. So it inspired a whole nother crew of them to look at their environment that they'd taken for granted with a different light, to think about whakapapa, not about necessarily their own experience, but the things that had happened so much earlier that had formed them. And I think that's where whakapapa has a whole nother level of journeys for us to experience.
So from Whanganui, I rode across to Metro to hook up with Whara Palmer and her research group over there. There were stacks of them.
Considering I only rang them 2 days before and said I'm going to be coming over soon because I didn't know how long it would take to ride down the Motu. I thought it'd be tiring and that I could probably handle about 100k a day, but I started ripping through the miles as I got a little bit fitter and could handle more. That was a particularly tough day. From Whanganui across to Palmerston North was another big headwind of probably 40 knots. I was down to 7k's an hour of riding because it was a brutal headwind. But another filter that if you're going to deliver to people, then you've got to deserve the right to stand in front of them. So I did my miles, and the awesome thing was when I arrived in there, Whara had sorted a hotel for me to stay in, so I had a bed that night, and it was really difficult to sleep on because I was getting used to sleeping on the grass under signs that said no camping. So it was harder to sleep than if I hadn't had a bed at all. And I thought about sleeping on the floor, and I said, Ed, you're being a clown, sleep on the bed. So went over, had a good talk with these fellas here, and then the next day started heading off towards Pahiatua and down the other coast towards Masterton. So I'd done from one coast to the other coast, then back again. So I started up in the far north, come down through Tamaki Makaurau, and went across to Thames and over in Hauraki, and then back across through Puriora, Te Kuiti, and over to Whanganui, and then from Whanganui all the way back across to the other side again to Pahiatua and down through Masterton. Now this is where these two fellas...
This fella here in the picture, him and a couple of others turned up to ride down with me. They are part of the Kahungunu group, and they work in the gym over there, Hikoi for Life, with Les Hoki and his crew. Daryl, who's standing up to speak here, they turned up at 10 o'clock at night and rode with me for a few hours down into Masterton.
It was one of the few places where it got a tailwind, so we were ripping along at 35k's an hour in the middle of the night, trying not to crash into each other. Also had Crystal and her tāne tautoko turn up from Te Aotearoa down in Pōneke. So we had 2 that came up and 3 that came down, and we rode that section through the night, and the following night we had to ride over the Remutaka hills and into the back of Pōneke to arrive at this place here.
The one on the right is Te Aotearoa's radio station. Why I'm holding that whakairo there is the name of the waka that it attaches to is the name of my daughter, Aniwa Niwa. So I took a few photos of me with my daughter in the whakairo form because I couldn't actually reach out to her because I'd been away from my girls for a while. So that was me being sensitive.
Now Daryl on the left hand side there, he gave a bit of a presentation to some of the people at Kōkiri Marae in Wellington there about some of the experiences he's had along the way. He's funny as hell, that fella. Last year we took him down to an event, multi-sport thing in the South Island, and he'd never seen snow, and as we were flying over he could see all the ice and snow, and it was a whole new experience for him. And while we were down there we did a little event from one mountain top down through a valley and then up to the top of another mountain. So the first half's okay because it's downhill, then you paddle a lake and then you climb all the way back up. So on the other side, when it finished, it was a 12k hill climb run, and then another 12k's of straight up the side of a mountain to get to the top. It ended up on a ski field at the very top of the other side. I knew this fellow was buggered because when we got to the top and the finish of it, he was hugging strangers. And I was watching him, I go, bro, do you know those people? He goes, no, I'm just pleased to be here. So funny as hell, the things that happen to people when they're under a bit of stress. I'm one of his biggest supporters now because no matter what, last year and during this year, I think we ran maybe 8 events. Those fellas from the Kahu Ninjas were the ones that turned up at every single event and finished every single thing they engaged with. So they were solid. They were
this photo here of the Hoiere. This particular part was the crossover from Pōneke, from Whanganui into the Queen Charlotte Sound area, or into Pelorus or Hoiere. Noticed a big change coming off the north and into the south, where the temperature for this day was up over 30 easily. So it was getting cooked. I got through 9 litres of water this day. And
what I noticed with riding down the Motu is I think it's probably cheaper to buy petrol than it is to feed a person that's riding all day because of the amount of food that you get through. As you come back online, just letting you know that it's recorded anyway, so you'll be able to catch up with it again. I spent 20 years or so or more in the South Island and really enjoy being in the south because there's less cars, less people, mountains are massive, and everything that happens down that place happens more intensely, if you like. So if I make a mistake out in the mountains in the Northland area, I can usually get away with it because they're not too big in size and it's warmer temperature. But in the South Island, if you make a mistake out in the mountains, normally you pay for it. So you can't mess around too much and need to be a bit more respectful sometimes of the taio that you're dealing with and different representations of that. So that started my journey down through the South Island and down the south. I saw some things there and connected up with a number of different events that were surprising to me as well. Heading down into Poto area.
Hokitika and Mawhero or Greymouth area down the bottom there. I stopped and saw some mates that are carvers of Pounamu down in that area and had a talk with them.
I spent some time on one of the beaches looking at different kohatu that were washed up. There's a particular beach down in the near Greymouth Hokitika area where Pounamu gets washed up. It comes out of the Arahuta, gets tumbled along the shorefront for quite a while before being pushed up onto this particular beach. So you can pick up pieces of Pounamu straight off, sometimes up in the size of an egg that you can find there, and lots of little ones all over the place.
Anyway, while I was there, I came across this punga were and I thought it was dead. And I was looking at it, it was massive. And the sea was coming in, washing over it, going out, washing and going over. And I thought, poor bugger, you know, it looked like something that might have been a crayfish in a previous life. And I poked it and it was still alive. And the bloody thing was trying to climb up the stick. And I crapped my pants at the time. I thought, holy shit, this thing's still moving. Well, it turned out that most of the people that were watching that Wānanga thing during its progress, they got into the stories about spiders more than anything else. And on that particular day, I had pages of comments of fellas talking about a spider.
The crack up was, I said to myself, so I give them gold every day about the whakapapa of different environments, and then everybody gets off on the size of a spider. I said, I waste my bloody time with you fellas, giving you whakapapa for everything else, and then you freak out about a spider. But it created a lot of discussion about that particular beach, the origin of Pounamu down there, and led into this next phase through here.
Into the whakapapa of snow. A lot of people enjoyed this one and commented a lot about that because of the raw beauty of the place. And in that photo, if you look up to the top left-hand side there, you can see the glacier. Looks like cloud, but that's part of the glacier coming down.
I've spent time up in these places here, up in the snow. One of the things that I'd like to be able to do with this particular piece of information or wānanga is maybe this year take an alpine wānanga with a group of people up into the mountains and show them the various types of snow and what it means. Oh yeah, you're loving that one, eh? Yeah, I can see thumbs up from one group that I'll have two mates there. With that one there, we can go up and look at the whakapapa force snow all the way down through the valley into ice, ending in cold water, or waimakariri. Interesting path in how water suspends rock. So there's a close relationship between how water that's coming off the bottom of a glacier picks up sediment and rock and keeps it suspended in its colour. So you'll see that rivers that come off the bottom of glaciers are normally really pale blue. That's because the atua whataaho or whatauaho is the atua of greywacke, or a particular rock they have in the South Island. Well, he gets captured by parawhenua mea and held up in the water, which gives it that funny colour. You can't drink it because it's like drinking a cup of bloody gravel. But in essence, what I'd love to be able to do is to take a group of people from some of these Wānanga deliveries and have one of our Wānanga up in the mountains, probably at the Ruapehu would be the easiest for us all to get to. But if you're interested in that, voice your opinions, put your comments up and let us know, and we'll organise something around that. Exciting opportunity there. Loved being in that place there, and I think it was a week later they had a flood come through that smashed the place over and washed away part of the river and went through the centre of town. When I came through that area there, it was passing down. And the next day I rode from Franz Joseph down to Haast, and it was a killer because of the amount of rain, because right near the end there's two passes that you go over. Well, not really passes, but they go around a coastal road and it goes up, then all the way back down to the bottom, then back up again. So I was broken on that day. And when I rolled into Haast, one of the weird things over in that area is when you come into any town, there's a sign outside the town saying you are entering, or there's a rotary sign or whatever. For Haast they had one, and I thought, I've made it. It was another 18 k's before the town appeared. And then all it was a pub, and there was a crazy lady serving in the pub that yelled at me when I walked in the door. So there was, "Oi, Sean, how's it?" So I hadn't expected some of those things from getting down that coast and being smashed over. That day it rained and got that cold that I had to pull over and try and find somewhere to shelter and try and get warm, because I had no dry clothes left and I couldn't handle it anymore. And the moment I pulled over and thought, I'm sick of you buggers hammering me all the time, as in Ngāatua, the sun came out. The moment I thought that, the sun came out and started drying me off, and I thought, there's my reward for persevere. So I stood in the rain for a bit, got pissed off, then the sun comes out, healed it all, drank a can of canned rice and was feeling pretty chirpy after that, and thought, I'll carry on then. So ended up riding into Haast, had a sleep there that night, and the next morning there was a couple of fellas, Pākehā fellas too, that were on road bikes, and their wives were following them with a car and carrying all their gear. So I said to their wives, "Hey, I'll throw my bags in your car and I'll ride with your husbands and see if I can keep up with them," because they were getting along 35, 40 k's an hour. So I took all my gear off and I rode with them. Ended up doing from Haast to Wānanga, and then carrying on from Wānanga to Queenstown, and it was 208 k's for the day, because those fellas had carried my bag and I was right up to Clacker the whole day and going flat out. But managed to rip through a heap, and I think the other reason for it was I was coming down into Arrowtown where my father's buried. Now I'm from Waikato and so was he, but he didn't want to come back up and wanted to stay down there. We'd been there for 20 years. I'm buggered if I know why. A heap of fellas from Waikato came down to take him home, and he'd already been adamant he wanted to stay there. So I think that drove me on to go down and see my father, but also to be in a place that I'd spent a lot of time when I was younger, growing up in that area.
Here's a picture that's not Tianau, actually, that's up in Tipua, or Lake Wakatipu next to Queenstown. And I used to swim and train and ride all through this area when I was young, because I was there from when I was 9 years old and spent 20 years buggering around in this environment, mountains and lakes. This lake here is that clean that when you swim in it, you can drink it while you swim. Which some of you will remember from being down at phys ed school and going through those locations of being in those places. And beautiful clear water that you can see through for a long way.
So coming into there was a homecoming of sorts anyway, because I'd spent so much time in that place. Sliding through the back and out and down towards Downlow, and then heading down towards Mulihuku was the final phase to get me to the end of that Wānanga. Now, a couple of things that have come out of being in that concept or being in that space is the development of mobile Wānanga for districts. Instead of doing the whole motu, going to our district, looking at your 6 sites of importance and doing mini Wānanga that we can record and then put up through a Facebook site, and maybe having a role in that as far as general whakapapa is concerned, but other people contributing their kōrero about their place and how they engage with it. So for Tūhoi, Shana, that would be something that you would take over and say, these are the things that make this place special to me. and how I engage with it. So there's all those other options of things that we could include in a localized ārohe approach to wānanga that we haven't yet explored. I talked to you earlier about maramataka as another form of building a physical activity program for that area that's based on that area. There's extensions as well that if there's the interest, over the next 12 months we're looking at providing a series of webinars on how to interpret the Atua Matua Māori Health Framework, and providing 2 levels on each of those webinars, because there's 24 levels in there to explain what they actually mean. Because I still get a lot of people saying, yeah, mean idea, but don't actually know what it means, and just nod their head, which is what I do a lot of as well. So helping people understand what I was trying to convey as a conceptual Atua Matua approaches when I wrote it. So if there's interest in that webinar, if there's interest in the Wānanga down in Ruapehu, interest in ārohe Wānanga, we want to know what your thoughts are about whether we should provide them, because if there's no one turns up, no point. But if there are people interested, then we can provide it. Now lastly, the other area that I'm particularly interested in is the use of that Atua Matua document as an assessment tool, so that we can use it to look at pre-existing Māori health programs, and if they prescribe or ascribe to a number of those different aspects from that Atua Matua concept, then there's more likelihood that it's a physical activity program that adheres to the philosophical importances from a Māori perspective, which means they've included Māori things. If it's in it, then there's more likelihood of success with Māori communities, because it's within the Atua Matua framework. So I'm working with Suari Burrell here out at Toi Tangata about how we change that Atua Matua framework into an assessment tool, and working on that at the moment. There's so many things to do and so little time, and the options are endless, but great. Want to hear from you fellas out there. If we deliver this Wānanga today, and it's fairly anecdotal kind of discussion about this journey down through to the South Island, but the capacity for what it's presented is huge. And I've been really humbled by the number of people that engage with it. It was real coincidental that there was that thing on TV last night on Native Affairs about some of the multi-sport stuff we're doing as well. I didn't see it, but a couple of people have said they saw the interviews that were with me and with Tumanako Paua. So there's definitely interest in the area, and a developing awareness of iwi-centred approaches to physical activity that aren't about physical activity. They're not even about health, ironically. What they're about is mātauranga first. That if we pursue the knowledge of our people, all of those other things will come. And I don't think that there has been that much of a focus on health in the past, and I mean, over 100 years ago. There was definitely a focus on making sure they were strong and fit to be able to survive and perpetuate their whakapapa, but there was no concept of the loss of health at that point. And if we take that into consideration, the development opportunities for what we're doing are massive. I think what we can do from here, Hariata, is maybe open up some mics for people to voice their opinions. I can see a couple of photos up here. I don't actually know who's on most of the time. For any comments you might have, for things that you want to ask, or for things that you want to throw around, aren't quite sure how to apply them. And my intention with it was a couple of things. When I wrote that document, I didn't intend anyone to read it particularly. I just wrote it for a guideline for when I conduct myself in work of what I've got to consider. But because there's been interest in it, where it's useful is that it can be provided as an example. But really quickly, fellas have got to own it themselves. A framework is just that. It's a framework to be populated with information that's relevant to your own district. So I can't come into Tūhoe, I can't come into Te Arawa, I can't come into Ngāti Porou and tell them what to do. I can barely go into Waikato and talk to them. So it has to be filled out with things that are relevant to your own experience in your own district, which requires you fellas that are kaimai to do that. So for the time being, I can provide examples of how I see the world from my perspective, which is a bit bent, you know, considering all the different things I've done over the years, and I've got a particular way of seeing the world. But if I provide an example, then that's the platform for you to move forward and own it, and you have to own it. Someone said to me a while ago, wow, you should have copyrighted that thing and sold it. And I said, well, how can you sell something that isn't yours? And how can you sell something that you haven't seen yet? So if someone from Te Arawa is going to populate it, it's theirs, and you don't know what that's going to look like. But they do need to engage with the ideas before they can shift to the next phase. And I think that that period of kaupapa Māori research is finished. It's done. We've moved into iwi-centred ideas of what matters to us as people from Tūhoe, Te Arawa, Waikato, and that's what we're pursuing. So the atua matua concept is just a concept to start and build your own as soon as you can. And I'd support you on that one, saying that you know, I can't come to your district. I met a woman from down your way, Oriwi, I think her name was, and she's part of the Wakama national team that went over to race in Aussie just recently. And there was a bunch of them that, Oriwa, I think, Oriwa. I'll have to find her name, I'll tell you later anyway, but there was a bunch of them said, oh, can you come and do some sports psych work with us? And I said, oh, I'm expensive. And they said, how much? And I said, oh, it'll be a deer hunt and probably a leg of pork. And if you're from Tūhoe, I want to know where the deer is. So she organised me a hunt for coming down into Tūhoe to go out and have a look around. Now, part of the reason for that is I learned just as much as I can transfer across as well. Theirs has been about high performance sport for them to go away and compete. But I dragged it back into, well, I'll exchange mātauranga about high performance sport for knowledge about the bush. So if I come down, you've got to set me up with someone that knows their shit and can talk to me about things that are happening out there. And her brother was really cagey. He says, I'm not bloody taking someone into my backyard to show them where all my kai is so that they can turn up with all their mates. And I said, well, fair enough too, you know, like I'm not coming down there to pilfer the place, but there's knowledge in your area that's specific to you fellas that gives an insight into some of the ways the rest of us may have thought as well. So I was really keen to get access into it. And I agree with you too that it has been dormant. It's not new knowledge. It's been floating around. But I think what's happening at the moment is we've got opportunity for taking old knowledge, looking at it through a contemporary Māori lens and developing something new. You know, we don't have to take just the old stuff or just the new stuff. We can combine the two, and then as someone from a specific iwi, make that into something that's going to recruit just our people from our district and be sustained by our people from our district. That's going to be the key to it, is that if they don't stay, then it dies. Here's a real interesting question that came up the other day. Can atua die? I said, oh, is that a fact? Can they? And I think I talked about it during some of those Wānanga as well. They can if people forget about them. Yeah, if they forget, then of course they do die in our heads and in our children and in our districts. But we've got a chance to give them a new life here, to bring them back. There's one atua that was smashed over by his brothers, and his skull was used as a protection for the lashings, and his leg bones were used as the handle for the toki that were used to cut the parents apart. So there is one who was killed, is sacrificed by the rest of them to be used, but that's a particular corridor from a particular area. But in essence, you know, what you're saying is that they've been dormant, so they're just sitting under the surface. So they're about to come back, eh? I got a thumbs up from Matua Tairakina there for that idea. Any other whakaaro, any other questions? How are we doing? Should we be wrapping it up soon or carry on or what?
Just ask if there's any more. There's only 2 other people, so.
I think probably the technological issues are going to be a bit of a problem to start with until we can get it coordinated better and flowing better so that it didn't cut out and people don't lose contact with it, because I think with contemporary Māori we're impatient. We don't put up with shit for long. If it doesn't work, then that's it, useless. So hopefully through Toitanga here we can get this going a bit better. But can you send in some of your views if you listen today about whether those whakaaro, those Wānanga ideas the projections going forward of where the sector might head, whether they're valuable to you, whether you'd be interested in involving yourself in some of those wānanga, and what potential areas to share ideas. I'm really excited to be in that space. O tira koe nei taku mihi ki a koutou oku hoa mahi ki tēnei. Mai o tēnā o tūhoi whiti atu ki porau te arawa te mahonga iwi konei. Mō koe te whakaaro pūkenga ki tēnei. Me taku o konei hariata mo tana mahi whakapaenga ki tēnei o ngā pūkenga. Ko koutou, mihi karanga. Mihi karanga ki a koutou mō koutou manākatanga me tautoko ki tēnei o ngā tino kaupapa kiau. Me te mahonga iwi mo te motu. Tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou. Thank you very much.